Get your paychecks up to 2 days faster with Early Pay. True story. Welcome to Huntington.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Week That Was. My name is Saeed Khan, and contrary to all of the rumors going out there with all the pop culture references I make, I didn't learn my English watching Match Game, Hollywood Squares, or any other shows that were on in the 70s here in the United States. I learned my English watching Benny Hill and Top of the Pops in England. Anyways, yes, that explains a lot, Greg is saying with that aha. Well, we've got a great panel again today, so let's go around the horn. We have attorneys Steve Fishman and Joel Sklar.
Yo.
We have our Deadline Detroit crew. We have columnist Greg Bowens, columnist Nancy Derringer, and of course our maestro Allan Lengel with the thumbs up there. So what should we talk about? How about Mar-A-Lago? By the way, I shouldn't be so presumptuous. Have any of you been to Mar-A-Lago?
No.
I have not, but I remember when Jeff Feiger maybe was on this show and we were off the air, we were talking, and he said Mar-A-Lago is very, it's very ornate, it photographs beautifully, but he said it's not well located. It's in Palm Beach geography. He said it's like, too close to the bad part of Palm Beach. I don't know, but I thought it was kind of interesting.
Can I interrupt here, Steve? There's some noise coming from your side there. If I mute you, you're
that's Steve you muted.
Yeah.
Mute him.
Oh, so
no, I was saying
coming...
there's some background noise coming from Steve. But anyways.
Okay.
All right. Okay.
Well, I think that's the same charge that people made about the Playboy Mansion when it was under Hefner's control, about sort of being the seedier part of Holmby Hills. So who knows? Or maybe he made it seedy.
Oh, wait, Holmby Hills or Chicago? Which version of the Playboy Mansion? Because I'm old school Chicago. That's
I thought that there was just the Playboy Club in Chicago, but
no, it was originally the Playboy Mansion was originally in Chicago, and then he moved the whole shooting match to Los Angeles. But anyway,
shooting match, excellent term. Okay,
yeah.
So
what was the question?
The question was, are we any closer to an indictment? I mean, after all, at any second now on this live show, we may very well have the release of the affidavit, of course, albeit redacted to a certain degree. But will it reveal anything new? And how will this play out regarding edging all the way closer, like the Price is Right mountain yodeling guy, toward Trump going off the cliff?
Well, I'm sure our esteemed attorneys here will be able to get down into the nitty gritty of the legal stuff. But in the court of public opinion, this is another step closer to the public indictment of former President Donald Trump. And I've said it on this show several times, and I shouted to the hills that every day this guy is losing more and more support. There are not the same number of people that voted for him last time are not there today. And, the more that this stuff dribbles out, I think the more, people just get sort of like fed up and just move on. And that's why DeSantis seems so attractive to some of these folks. Now, I hope he gets, walloped in the governor's race down there. At the same time, you can look left and see Trump and look right and see DeSantis and go, oh, over here, that's, same kind of Trumpy stuff, but without all the drama, that we have on this other side. So,
Nancy, I noticed you were sort of mouthing something. I don't think you were saying steal third.
No, I don't think I disagree with Greg as all. I don't think that he's not losing so much support that you would notice. And I mean, I think reasonable people jumped off the crazy train, years ago. So we'll find out, but I don't think so. As far as what did you say about DeSantis? Whatever.
Hoping he gets walloped in the
I don't think he's going to get walloped either. My friends in Florida say Charlie Crist is a candidate, and he's way outfunded. So what I want to hear now, though, is Fishman to talk about the affidavit, because this is the one that he was taught. He said he really wanted to see. So take it away, Steve.
What I really wanted to see, I'm not going to see. What I really want to see is the entirety of the affidavit. I gotta believe, and like you say, we'll know in about 24 minutes. I'd like to see how much is left once the redactions are made. I can tell you I've received discovery packages from the feds, numerous cases where they redact things to protect the names of informants, et cetera.
Sure.
And what you wind up with is 12 pages, of which 9.5 pages are redacted. There's some dates and some times, and maybe there's a car, and there's not a whole hell of a lot in there that you can tell. I have to believe, though, that if this judge is bothering to do it, and if he's requiring the government to submit it, there should be something in there that would be of interest to the general public. But more importantly, generally the target, unless they're very careful in their redactions, the target of the search, in this case Trump, will be able to tell, or at least have a pretty good idea who's snitching on him. Because as I said before on this show, somebody very close to him was talking to the Fed, because you've got to have probable cause in anybody's case. But when you're starting to talk about even an asshole like him, he is still the former president of the United States. And I can't believe that this magistrate judge would have signed a search warrant that didn't have something very compelling. And not just the fact that he had this stuff, but that something was going to happen to the stuff. Either he's going to sell it, give it to his buddy Vlad, or who knows what. So, we'll have to see in now 23 minutes. We'll see how much is in there, but don't be surprised if there's not much that tells you much.
Just
It's
Vlad
dangerous.
or Kimmy. It could be Kimmy as well, his other good friend.
Could be Jared.
It's dangerous.
Jared's denied it, not him. The Trump fatigue, I'm with Nancy. I don't think, if you're not fatigued by Trump yet, you're not going to be. So
Yes.
the Trump fatigue factor, I wish to God, he would diminish enormously, but I just don't. I think once he steps back, it's all's good for him. I mean, it's just nuts. So the Trump fatigue, I'm with Nancy. I don't think it's going to really erode much.
Right. Allan.
I know, we've speculated about this before, but I mean, here's a guy who has a little, if any, morals. He's got these boxes of documents that could be worth so much money to so many different governments. Who's to trust a guy like that? I think, Biden no longer allowed him access to that type of material anymore because he didn't trust him, and rightfully so. I mean, the guy has got no morals. The idea of him thinking, I could get $50 million, I could get $100 million for these documents in my basement, not unreasonable.
I want to throw out like a potential contrary theory to this, and that is just that Trump has never understood the job to be that he works for the American people, right? He's never understood that to be, and the idea that what's that? It's from one of those
South
one-man
Pacific?
shows. No, one of those one-man shows with about Harry Truman, where he said, I was walking out of the Oval Office and I found a pencil in my coat pocket, and I went back and I put it in the drawer because that belongs to the American people. Trump has never understood that, and he's never followed that. And there was a piece on CNN in the last couple of days that I saw online where somebody was saying, he's got this lawyer whispering in his ear saying, those are yours. Those are yours. They can't take those from you because you own them. And it's like the way he went through all of his, the head of the FBI, and, saying that you're not loyal. I want loyalty. What he told Comey, I want loyalty. And he doesn't understand that it's not about him. It's about, people who work for the federal government serve the public. They don't serve the chief executive. And so I think it's possible that he's hanging on to these things just to be an asshole about it.
Yeah, I think that's
because
true.
he thinks they're his.
Yeah. I
What'd you
agree.
say, Joel?
I think you're correct. I mean, I think Trump looks at everything as his. He looked at the presidency as his, not the American. I mean, this guy is a narcissist. He has no distinction between him and the world outside of him.
Right.
He's not.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think the point for Trump is I'm taking them. These are mine. These letters are sent to me from Kim Young-gi, whatever it is. And but he has no concept of the other, of helping. He has no
or
concept.
Archives or
None of that.
the long
the
arc of
law doesn't
history.
apply to Trump. Trump
Right.
has his own construct he lives in, and the law doesn't apply to him in that construct. It's nuts, but so far it's born to be true.
And I completely understand that. But I would encourage Joel and Nancy for you guys to look at Projects 538. They do the polling they keep track of all the polls that are out there, and Trump's unfavorability rating has been growing every week. It's now 17 points higher than it was before. And so, I mean, I'm looking at it right now. And so
Okay.
I mean, reasonable people can agree to reasonably disagree, but yeah, there are going to be people who are certainly sycophants who he can never do any wrong to. But for the vast majority of voters out there, that's what you're thinking is simply not true.
You know,
He's losing support every week. And when they unfold that thing today, the crazies are going to be like, they're going to go after the judge in the court of public opinion. They're going to go after the FBI and say, this is not enough. And the redacted stuff, they're going to try and cast doubt on that, but for the rest of us, it will be reasonably seen as a step in the right direction, and more to come.
Okay.
So on that point though, about Trump being, how can we put this gently, external to understanding the laws and the processes of how government works. What about the other high-ranking Republicans who seem not to have a problem with his neglect of procedural matters, shall we call it? I mean, after all, we find that a lot of Republican leaders have jumped on this bandwagon of impugning the FBI. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, in fact, has jumped on this situation where Facebook/Meta founder Mark Zuckerberg has admitted that they held the story on Hunter Biden in the lead up to the 2020 election, and McCarthy says, "See, this is the FBI, not the feds in general, that are in conspiracy to kind of discredit and delegitimize the FBI." It seems as though it's a pretty widespread conceit that's happening at the highest levels.
Isn't that the modus operandi of the Republican Party? I mean, again, I think that just that Trump is going, is still Trump. He's still going to have those who kowtow to him. He still carries a lot of weight. And my belief is when he steps back in, if he says, I'm running, that all these polls are going to shift. There's going to be a momentum behind him. The Republicans are going to congeal behind him. I
congeal. Congeal. What a perfect verb for that. They're going to congeal.
But I think that's really what's happening. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's happening now. That's what, to fund the FBI. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene's insane, but this is the alt-right of the Republican Party that is the dominant strain.
Yeah,
I think, Nancy, that creates the new dish of GOP and aspic. As Greg said, there has been an increase in the unfavorability points for Trump, and at the same time, it seems as though President Biden has seen an upswing, having a favorability rate in the 30s. He's now bounced up to about 44%. And he can claim credit for a couple of major scores, including the Inflation Reduction Act, and of course also his statement this week on forgiving a certain amount of student debt. The fact that has ushered in quite a response means that nobody's really neutral about this. It's either lauded by some, criticized for not going far enough, and on the other hand, and on the other side, it is seen as the worst thing ever. What do we think about debt relief, forgiveness here?
Long overdue, welcome, and welcome by me anyway. $10,000 is not much, but it's something. And a lot of people are going to feel positive effects from this. I don't believe it's going to fuel inflation. And if I were going by nothing other than the reactions of Republicans who are wetting their pants and pulling their hair out over it, I have to say it was a good move. So
yeah, but I hear the voice of Rush Limbaugh. Wait, say you're just giving them sugar.
I know.
Sugar. But no, listen, I'm all in favor for it. I think, I had student loans, I paid them off, and they were hard, and when you're not making a lot of money, that 10 grand is a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
So I'm happy with it. I'm relieved, relieve the debt. That's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Steve.
I read Goldman Sachs, of all people, almost immediately upon Biden's announcement, had a very lengthy article. I saw it on the Market Watch website where they had already analyzed how much dough and who's going to get it. And really, they in just a hardcore kind of mathematic way said all this noise about, oh, it's going to make the inflation rate go crazy is complete horseshit, because it's not enough money to make the inflation rate go completely crazy. Number two, it's pretty clear, unless people come up with some novel ways to cheat, which some wealthy people will, wealthy people are not going to benefit from this. It said in a different article that I read on this issue that a lot of working class kids, they don't go to college. So where this money's winding up going is to the middle class person who is like what Joel described, where, you know, that extra 10 grand or 20 grand, depending on which it is, that can make the difference in how you're living, you know, for the next 4 years if your kid's in school. So I think I really didn't know. I saw it when we were early in the morning, a bunch of us looking at the screen in the gym, and everybody had a different opinion at the time. So I just started looking up these articles just to try to get some kind of a feel for it, because I'm no economist like Nancy is, for instance.
We're all economists.
I'm just a mouth on legs. That's all I am.
Well, I think this is a good move, and I think it's going to have a positive impact, but it doesn't go far enough. And let me say at least this: it's chipping away at the situation that we're all faced with. We've seen the college finance industry grow into a monster over time. And what's interesting about this is that these people knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, the finance industry, they use young people as foils to get at a larger market. Now, Congress protects that market because they prevent student loans from being discharged, which is really hard, in bankruptcy. The only thing that doesn't get discharged in bankruptcy, I mean, as a secured debt, your retirement funds are not even considered secured debt in federal bankruptcy anymore. So they created a protected market. It's largely unregulated. They don't regulate the interest rates, and it's used as a foil to get to other people. So young people are prevented from taking out huge loans, but they're capped. But parents and grandparents and the auntie and the people that want to help out, that have charge for these young people, take out these loans on their behalf. This is not part of the discussion, but this is a very large part of the folks that have the loans. And so we're talking about generational debt that has occurred here. And I think that this is going to give it much more support than what we have. Interestingly, everybody's focused on the young people that took out some of these loans. They're not talking about this other group, this wider group of people who will also benefit from these cuts. And so, I've heard folks say, oh, this is Democrats buying votes. Well, Donald Trump gave out stimulus checks and insisted that his signature be on those stimulus checks. Right. Now, how much did that help him? You know what I mean?
I don't know. And the other thing is, go ahead.
Free advertising on that. I missed it because I got direct deposit, but thank God, because I didn't want to see it.
I think there's a couple things though that really need to be addressed loudly. And one of them is I'd love to see, starting from the president and working its way down through governors and other elected officials, we need to start making a lot of noise about the college tuition. Everybody's going along with University of Michigan, raising their tuition, blah, blah, blah. I would say, and I think everybody in my age group would agree, the biggest difference between going to college, particularly at U of M, 50 some years ago, and now is when we went to school, there were people from everywhere. There were people whose dads worked in the plant. There were people from all over the place. Why? Because we could work in the summer, literally, and make enough money to pay the tuition at the University of Michigan. Now they've turned it into an elite university in all these universities. And I'd like to see some noise made. Mitch Daniels, the former governor of Indiana, runs Purdue. And if I'm not mistaken, the tuition's $14,000, and he never lets it go up somehow. How he does it, I don't know. But it's something that's obviously something that needs to be talked about. And I don't hear anybody talking about that. So that kind of gets me on the.
I will say this though, Steve. One of the best kept secrets at the University of Michigan is the poorer your family is, the lower income your family is, the less you pay, to go there, and they need to do a better job, and they know this, and they will admit it themselves. The administration of the U of M is in recruiting smart kids who do not have a lot of family resources. I think they have, what is it, the Hail Go Blue guarantee or something like that. If your family makes, under whatever the benchmark
I think
is,
it's like 60,000.
Yeah, basically it's
Yeah.
free for you. The problem is like once these kids get in there, sometimes they can't keep up because they tend to have lower income kids tend to have bigger holes in their preparation. They went to lousier schools, high school and so forth. But it's not that they are trying. I mean, it's an elite school. It's hard to get into, but once you can get into it, it's not that bad. I mean, they gave my daughter a 4-year full tuition scholarship. So, I mean, we only had to pay about half of her $529. now she's a rock and roller, really adding to society for that.
To what
awesome.
Steve was talking about, the tuition being so cheap and stuff like that. I remember, Michigan State, it was $700 tuition for the whole year. So people of our generation who are bitching about this, they didn't have to deal with those type of tuitions. They didn't have to get loans.
So, the other thing is you really, don't lose this point. In the state budgets cut the funding to schools, they switched to, the for-profit, loan model more than they to make up the difference and to make more. But in addition to that, man, this incentivized the schools to raise their tuition because the market could bear it.
Yeah, very true.
And so you could lower your costs by having, the same number of students or fewer, but you make so much more because, you're getting people can borrow this money. And so parents and grandparents were borrowing this money. They couldn't get a $200,000 loan for a business or, a second house or whatever it is. They were borrowing way above their means, and they were incentivized to do this because, who wants to tell their kid, no, you can't go?
Well, when I matriculated at Michigan, it was, I think, 1984. And my first semester tuition bill was $1,086, which happened to be that same semester. That was the out-of-state tuition for the University of Texas. In-state for the University of Texas in 1984, a semester was $400. I don't even know if it's 400 a credit hour now. The tuition now for a semester in-state at Michigan is $8,000. It is $26,000 for out-of-state. It's one of the reasons why Michigan has just jacked up the enrollment for out-of-state to the maximum that they can, because it is a total cash cow. And by the way, on campus now, if you've been there recently, there are these high-rise apartment buildings that look like you were on DuPont Circle. One actually advertises that they have 2 Teslas on standby that you can rent out, kind of like go-cars, if you're a resident.
I know. That's the other thing, though. That's the amount of luxury that has been introduced into the college experience now, particularly for athletes, is simply obscene. I mean, the way and the money that's donated to to a school like Michigan, it goes to either the athletic department or the business school, because it tends to come from some, tycoon billionaire like Stephen Ross. And that's what he wants is more, more business, more MBAs. But it's, if you want to study English or sociology or education, it's not going to be the same way.
Well, Saeed, to your point, Saeed, the colleges have all moved to this model like the casinos. They want to keep everything in campus. And so that's why we're seeing like the high rise. You see it at Wayne State with all the new student housing that's up there and all the restaurants and the retail that's going on campus. And at U of M, Michigan State, these other places, they're putting gates up around to, keep that market inside. It's really interesting because colleges used to be catalysts for spurring greater economic development for the town or city that they were in. But now they're doing the opposite. And I contend that part of the reason why this is able to happen is because they have incentivized the private loan industry.
Hey, now, Greg, just to let you know, there's a 37% chance that next week when Wayne State starts, I will get new chalk. So,
you're not using the magic board. They got it there now.
What? The only magic board is if I wear a wizard's hat and have a wand in my other hand. we got chalkboards, baby.
No, don't even try it, man.
Come on, you can come to my classes at Manugia.
I'm coming to your class. Wait, what do you teach? First of all, I got to know how much no-dos I need to take.
Oh, come on.
This term I'm teaching history of Islamic Empire, global issues and institutions, and I think Islam and the challenge of modernity.
Wow.
So
those all three sound really interesting.
Yeah,
I want to audit.
I'm enrolling.
Me too.
You guys come on in. Allan, you've got no excuse. You can fall out of bed and come
right. I'm enrolling, but I want a guaranteed A.
Oh, okay, we might have to talk offline about those things. But no, I mean, I think that the point that you're all making regarding the kind of economics is something that also is part of the hypocrisy. I mean, you saw all of the Republican Congress people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz and others come out and actually get trolled back by the White House that pointed out that all of their PPP loans were forgiven. The amount of student debt that's out there is similar to. There's an echo. I mean, I hate hearing me.
We got to mute Fishman. Something's going on here.
Fish is.
The fact that you've got all of this that's out there right now. I think that it's interesting that Biden was able to exploit this. Everything hurts and I'm dying. Ooh, okay. So the first is an REM song. I mean, medley.
We're laughing over your T-shirt, Steve. Go ahead. What'd you say?
Is this okay now? I know Lengel keeps muting me, keep telling me.
That seems
is
better.
everyone else hearing the little echoing?
I'm hearing the echo.
That's better. And Greg just decided to turn sideways.
So match game thing. We got some, trickeration going on.
Greg is on the moon right now. He's floating.
Yes, Greg is rotated because his blank turned. There's a match game thing for you.
He also seems to be frozen as well. Anyway, go ahead.
But what about this idea that the White House and particularly President Biden seem to be pushing back on the Republicans as a whole, but also on what they see as the hypocrisy of people like Gaetz and Green et al.
I'll just say, if you didn't, you need to explain better what happened last night. For every member of Congress who took to Twitter to complain about, the Democrats are trying to buy votes. I paid off my student loans, et cetera, et cetera. They would release a what do I want to say? They would release a tweet. Yeah, it would be a tweet that explained how much each of these people had received in PPP loans, and a lot of them had. And I was kind of struck. I mean, apparently Matt Gaetz got a 6-figure sum. And I'm like, why would he get that? I mean, somebody asked, does he have like a prom dress store on the side or what? I mean, I don't understand.
Babysitting service.
Yeah, babysitting service. And Marjorie Taylor Greene as well. And Lauren Boebert, I believe, because she's got this, her shitty restaurant back in Colorado. And so and all of these people received substantial PPP loans that were then forgiven. And so for them to it's like stick a cork in it, lady. I mean, you have absolutely no basis to complain about some poor kid who got a teaching certificate and took out a loan getting a $10,000 credit on it now. I mean,
those people live on another.
It was a great moment though, and it's like that is how you fight liars.
Well, they live on another planet. I was watching last night. I don't know why. Started watching Tucker Carlson, and it was amazing. Yeah, I was just curious. It was amazing what he'd do. He'd talk about an athlete and say, "This athlete, 26 years old, just won the triathlete or whatever, and triathlon, and then he'd say, then they'd be like, what? We don't know if that wasn't from the vaccine. We don't know for sure. We can't say.
Right. Yeah.
But, and so, and he did that with he goes, there were 5 doctors who died. We don't know for sure that it wasn't from the vaccine. We can't say. And I'm like, this is scary shit.
They might have been, they might have been possessed by demons. You know, we don't know that either. So
just to reflect on the Democrats responding, you know, with these tweets, I think it's a reflection of Biden getting his mojo back. You know, I think the Democrats, you know, ever since the Roe decision came out, the momentum's been swinging. You know, the Democrats have an issue to get behind that is strong and will evoke a lot of passion, a lot of votes, a lot of people to be concerned. And I think that Biden's accomplishments are you know, his legislative accomplishments are now bearing some fruit. And I think this is just a reflection of the Democratic Party feeling more emboldened and confident. I think the GOP is on its heels. I think Roe is going to have a huge backlash. You got, you know, be careful what you wish for. What are those things? You got it.
Buyer's remorse.
Well, the dog that caught the car. Yeah.
Right.
So Joel, do you think it's Biden getting his mojo back, or has he been playing rope-a-dope for the last year and a half?
Well, if he's been playing rope-a-dope, it's remarkably convincing. But I just think that, listen, you know, Biden, I mean, you know, he came to office and I can govern, and he's governed it. And you know, what if he's old, young, he's getting shit done. And you know, I think that this is a reflection. Again, the Democrats can be becoming more aggressive because they can be. They've had accomplishments. They got good things going. You know, the Afghanistan withdrawal is 18 months behind them. They've been doing very good things recently, and I think this is a reflection of that. And I hope they keep being aggressive.
Oh, hey, Lengel, sorry, man. I owe you $5. Joel cursed before Nancy. I had 5 on Nancy.
Nobody
Well,
Greg. Let's go to Fishman, because when Fishman talks, we get no background noise.
Greg, I mean, if you want to win your money back, why don't you go to the U of M casino? Because you know, that's where you might be able to win back. My prediction is that the irony is going to be that Trump will blame, if the Republicans have a poor showing in November. I think he's going to blame it on Alito.
Wow.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's possible, but he doesn't think that deeply. You know,
I don't think he knows. He doesn't know who Alito is.
Yeah, he really doesn't. He really
doesn't. What you guys were saying earlier is completely on point. You can't. I don't want to go through my normal about him being a criminal. We already know that, but he doesn't. He's not. You can't compare him to anybody else because the guy has absolutely no interest in the art of governing, no interest in, I'm telling you, it's 50-50. He knows who Samuel Alito is. I bet you.
I think you might be onto something, Steve, because the reports were when Ayman al-Zawahiri, bin Laden's second in command and then the ostensive leader of al-Qaeda, when he was zapped in Afghanistan a few weeks ago, news came out that apparently there was a chance that Trump had to go ahead and take him out. But he didn't recognize the name when the National Security advisor put it in front of him, says, never heard of her. And so therefore he said, not going to do anything about it. So there you go. But I'm very fortunate that he didn't then send a hit squad after Ayman Mohyeldin on MSNBC, because that would have been really unfortunate to have that kind of mistaken identity. But what about the primaries that just happened? I mean, we had some in New York. We mentioned Florida with DeSantis and Charlie Crist. Val Demings is running against Marco Rubio. What do you see as far as the chances now of either the Senate or the House flipping? Steve?
The reason I put my hand up, you guys are the political people a lot more than I am. But what I like to do is I like to read, particularly from people like Sarah Longwell, the people who conduct these surveys they get independent voters, and the Times has been doing that. You guys have been noticing the Times has been having articles like that. Yeah. I find that stuff to be fascinating, particularly when I read one. I think it was either 11 or 12 people in Florida, and maybe 1 or 2 had a positive thought about Marco Rubio. everybody's been kind of saying, oh, he can't be beaten. He can't be beaten. I'm not so sure about that. If these are the independent people that are going to switch their votes, it was amazing to me what they said. A lot of them really like Val Demings because she was a police chief. She talks, she has something to say. She's not just chirping talking points. Some of these independent people didn't like Rubio kissing Trump's behind after the way Trump talked about him back when they ran against each other.
Oh, yeah.
So, I don't know. I trust Greg and you guys way more because you know politics better than I. But I really think I find it fascinating to read those columns where they talk about what they've done with independent people. And I was very surprised to see how much negativity was directed towards Rubio in particular. DeSantis also, but Rubio in particular. And there's a much stronger candidate running against Rubio, in my opinion, at least, than running against DeSantis.
Well, and Florida is a weird state. I mean, you've got the Panhandle, which might as well be ceded to Mississippi and Alabama. You've got the center of Florida with Tampa, Orlando, going all the way to Daytona, which is really pretty blue. And then you've got Miami, which is a mixed bag of blue and red. I mean, what kind of chances do you think that Foam Party Marco is going to have? I mean, with a strong opponent like Demings.
Greg.
Here's the thing. I think I think it's hard to unseat an incumbent. We all know that. But guess what? In this kind of situation where, the politics of things have shifted now. It used to be trying to convince people to vote, but now it's all about getting your people out because, it's hardcore Democrats and people aren't really switching over parties, except in one area, which I find really, really interesting. And that is white suburban males have been drifting to the left because of Roe. Now, I joke all the time and say 9 out of 10 guys I know want to keep abortion legal. Nobody wants to have to pay to fly their girl to New York. Are you kidding me? You know how expensive that is? But anyway, and so that's an interesting sort of drift that's happening in the suburbs. So the Republicans had already lost in large part a lot of the independent white suburban women voters, and now they're losing the same among men because of Roe. And so we've been seeing in the last few election cycles that it's all about turnout. Forget trying to convince people. You got to get the people out who already support you. And you have a voting season, like here in Michigan, as opposed, if you wait till election day, it's over. You've lost. That's not gonna help you. So
Allan,
I think one of our viewers was saying Democrats will keep the House but lose the Senate. I think the Democrats have a pretty good shot at keeping the Senate. I mean, we're looking at in Pennsylvania, that's currently a Republican seat. I think, the lieutenant governor there, I think, is going to beat Dr. Oz. I think there's a good shot at that. I said, Belle Demings got a shot. We have some other races. Ohio. There's a shot. Look, Ohio has one Democratic senator. And they've got, Congressman Ryan, who's a pretty decent candidate. Who knows? We could be, but I think the Dems have a pretty good shot at holding on to and in fact doing better.
They have a shot. I mean, I think that these primaries, now that all the primaries are pretty much over, the takeaway seems to be it's not as dark as it looked, a few months ago. After the what are you doing, Greg?
What is that?
Are you doing a sock puppet show or something?
Yeah.
Right. Do you need help? Is there some sort of signed Lengel universal thing?
Yeah. Anyway, I think it's true. It's true that things are not as dark, but I am not going to make any predictions. I don't follow politics at the atomic level. I do think in Michigan, and I'm becoming increasingly confident in saying in Michigan, Republicans aren't going to make a dent in anybody. Right. I mean, I think that at the state level, I think Gretchen Whitmer might as well just, start booking out her calendar for the next 4 years, because I think she's still going to be governor, and ditto for the other two. So
she's up by a double-digit lead over Tudor Dixon. I think the most current poll shows her at about 11%. She's crossed that magical 50% mark. 39 to Dixon, and I think 11% are still undecided. Do you think that the ads, which seem to be running all the time about Dixon saying no exceptions to abortion, are working?
Yes. That is the simple answer to a complex question. Yes. I think they're working very well. And despite what Greg's chuckle fit over men wanting abortion to remain legal so that they
Keep it legal,
so they can avoid paying child support. I think women are energized by this. I think, even though I've always said that if you're going to oppose abortion, it is more morally coherent for you to oppose all abortion in every single case than it is to say, well, we're going to let rape and incest victims off the hook. Those fetuses are not babies, but you slutty sluts who had sex because you're slutty sluts, you have to do this. I mean, that's much more punitive. Even though that's probably true, I think when people hear these individual cases that are coming out, like the 10-year-old in Ohio, or Charlie LaDuff's 14-year-old girl who was, raped by her uncle, when they hear that and they see these cases and think, and we're going to make these girls carry these infants or carry these pregnancies, then it becomes real. And so I think that it's absolutely effective.
But wait a minute, Nancy, did you just say that Tudor Dixon is a moral person? Was that?
Well, I just said it's a morally coherent position. That's the Right to Life position. Right to Life has always advocated that way, and she's endorsed by Right to Life, and she's going to.
You know what I've heard the issue framed as, though, which I like, because I think it's really moving. It is the forced pregnancy aspect of it.
Right.
That's it.
I mean, this is just, as I've never really thought of it that way, quite frankly. And and when I heard, it's like, oh my God, you're going to compel someone to take to term. I mean,
right.
That is a frightening proposition to me, that you're going to compel a mother to care.
Right.
I don't know how you control their body. I am just absolutely like, my God, that is.
Isn't that a violation of the 13th Amendment? Well, I mean, I'm being absolutely serious.
It's servitude. Yeah, I mean, to the extent, absolutely. There's a bunch of issues in that, but it's amazing to frame the issue that way is the right way to frame the issue.
Right.
Yeah, I had never heard it expressed that way either.
It's forcing a woman to carry to term.
It's frightening to me, and I don't have to carry one.
Right. And so, I thought that was a really good way of framing the issue. It turns it on its head, and it's it's very direct.
Yeah.
The person who I first saw frame it in that way was Jennifer Rubin in the Post, and she started referring. They're not pro-life people. She calls them pro-forced birth people. That's right, exactly what he talks about. But I think, and we've said this so many times on this show about different issues, like with everything else, it is easy to stand there and talk about it, or sit there and talk about it until it's your cousin or your sister or a good friend of yours who happens to have a daughter who's 10 who goes through what that girl did in Ohio. All of a sudden, these people talk in the abstract. That's what drives me crazy. They talk in the abstract. Yes, this is what we should do. I want to see what they do when it's their daughter or their cousin. Remembering the Dan Quayle interview with Katie Couric, right? Well, we talk about it as a family, and then we'd make a decision, which is exactly what most people are going to say if you frame it in that way.
The potato man.
If I was your kid, I'm like, my 10-year-old daughter is going to carry. That's not happening.
Exactly. That's the point.
So Tudor actually has now picked, it seems, her running mate for lieutenant governor, who is Shane Hernandez, who almost immediately picked up Trump's endorsement because he wants back into Michigan. Will this move the needle?
His endorsement or the lieutenant governor pick?
Either one.
I think it's a benign. It seems like a benign pick, and it's normally a benign sort of position. I think the fact Trump is really worried that the convention is going to be a mess, that the Republicans are going to be a mess, and that he's going to be hurt by that personally. He could give a shit about Michigan, but he's back Tudor, and now he doesn't want some of these people to mess it up. And we'll see this weekend convention. The Republican convention up in Lansing is going to be, I think it's going to be a mess. I'll be shocked if they can keep it together.
Oh, certainly they're hoping that, picking this guy will energize the Hispanic vote in some kind of way. And although to be honest, I mean, you turn on Fox anytime and they're screaming about the border, and here we are, a border city, and we don't think about it at all.
Crazy Canadians.
They keep saying sorry. Is it
where that's coming from?
Going to be chaotic, Allan, like 1956 Democratic National Convention or 1968 Democratic National Convention?
Either one. It's going to be, I think there's so many selfish people that are not into the unity of the party. And the party's so fractured anyways. You've got the Trump, the election liars. You've got the more traditional people. I think you're really going to, it'll be a fascinating convention. Like I say, if they can keep it together, it'll be shocking. And maybe that'll be a testament that maybe there's some hope for them. But I don't think it's going to happen.
So, speaking of violence, it is very nice and gratifying traveling around the country and around the world that Detroit does not have the stigma of being the murder capital of the world as it once did.
Damn.
Except,
what do we got to do to get that back? Go ahead.
Well, funny you should mention that. We have made local, state, national, and international news once again for violence. But it has to do with the Belle Isle slide.
Ooh, I'm going down the slide, baby.
Apparently, no other news item out of Detroit has evoked as much interest, and certainly me getting calls from around the world saying, what gives, except for a piece of entertainment on Belle Isle. By the way, I mean, and seriously, Greg, have you actually been on said giant slide?
Come on, man. You cannot grow up here and not go on the giant slide. It's a rite of passage. You do it all the time. Your parents take you to Belle Isle, and the first thing you're thinking about is the giant slide, and they give you a couple bucks and you go down there. And guess what? If you're not getting air on the giant slide, you ain't sliding, baby. I don't know what you're doing.
then you ain't from Detroit.
You ain't from Detroit. You got to get some air. You got to get some rug burns when you get down at the bottom and you slide off that.
There's got to be some merch opportunities here.
Oh, there have been. Did you see the first T-shirt that came out with like the body flying above in the air above the slide?
I mean, we're coddling these kids. Saeed, our generation, man. We're like, we didn't wear seat belts. People smoked in the car, and we were fine.
Buddy, we're the last generation that ever skinned their knees.
I think for Judaism, instead of the bar mitzvah being manhood, entering into manhood, you should have to do the slide, and then your bar mitzvah.
Well, Allan, why not combine? Why not combine? We can have the slide open on Saturdays just for the community.
Instead of jumping the broom, you go down the slide.
The kids will be cowering up there, and the parents will go, you've got to go. It's your bar mitzvah.
I will say this. I think the funniest thing, I keep changing my mind about what is the funniest thing about the giant slide story. First of all, it was the videos that show people like coming down like they had been thrown off a bridge, they're and all that. I also chuckled that Charlie LaDuff seemed to be whining that everyone was talking about the giant slide and not about whatever he wanted to talk about. Pay attention to me! Pay attention to me! Then the other one was the the DNR like put out some like press release or something essentially saying you're not riding it the right way, that you have to like put your feet in the bag and then you have to lean forward in a particular angle and put your hands down and then you'll be okay. And I thought, telling children they're riding a slide the wrong way is just hilarious. But then I found somebody on Twitter who tweets about 1970s Detroit history posted a story about, I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny, but it is funny. It's funny.
Is this funny like Greg funny?
No, it's funny. It's bad. You laugh. It's not funny, but you laugh anyway. About like a giant slide attendant who like some kids like pushed their way to the front of the line and ran up the stairs without paying the 15-cent fare in 1972. And the slide operator shot one of them and killed him. Shot him and killed him.
That would be excessive force.
Yeah, and then you reach to like the fourth or fifth paragraph of this story, and it says 4 years ago, the same slide attendant had been knifed by a woman, stabbed by a woman, also over a
gosh.
dispute over the slide fare. So it's kind of like,
Wow.
That's a
could
rough
this story
job.
be any more Detroit? And I don't think so.
Well,
Or
that's not
any
fair
more
because the
karmic.
state took over the slide, you know.
Yeah, I
So,
know.
you know,
It's true. But
you
still,
know, but you know, the mayor should have went down there and said,
Said,
Greg,
look, it's
Greg,
safe
protect
for
our
me.
children.
He
Greg,
should have went on it
how-
himself to show
Are
it was
you
safe.
actually turning this into a screed against socialism? That now that the state took control over the slide, all of
Everything's
this.
going to hell.
Oh my goodness! Oh,
To the
well, I
left
mean,
of the local control, baby.
so when I was in college, my buddies and I would go down to Cedar Point because they had one of those sack slides, and we would treat it like the chariot race in Ben-Hur. I mean, we'd be sitting there punching each other coming down the slide, and by the time we got to the bottom, we had blood, and these little kids are like wondering, "Is it that dangerous?" We're like, "Try it." Hey, by the way, Allan, I think you're onto something with the Jewish angle about the slide. It reminds me of the Saturday Night Live thing with the mohel in the back of the Granada.
Right.
Why not have a mohel come down the slide doing his business?
Or we could also have a baptism where we have a big, pool at the end where people go.
Why not? I
Why
think we
not?
can do
Sacrilegious.
all of these
We're all
things.
about.
yeah.
Well,
There
the
we
giant
go.
slide is going to be part of the X Games, and I am voting for it to be the next entrance into the Olympics.
Slide-a-thon. Yeah.
Well, you're just saying that because we don't have to worry about the East German athletes next to us on the slide anymore, Greg. All right, with that, let's move into our favorite phase.
Oh, that's funny.
Our favorite phase, would that be this?
Schmuck. It's not smuck. It's schmuck. Smuck. Schmuck. Smuck. Say sh. Sh. Now say muck. Muck. Now say sh and muck together real fast. Smuck.
We are
Oh,
at the
handsome
time
Warren
of
Beatty playing a
Schmuck
dummy.
or Smuck of the week. So, who wants to go first?
I'll cell phone. I'm the schmuck of the week. I have not taken a vacation all summer, and I'm realizing that summer's over, and I'm just a schmuck for not doing it. So I'm going to own myself on this one. I can't believe I didn't use my summer more wisely. I have no stories to tell. Didn't see anything. Didn't go anywhere.
You have all
So
of September.
Oh,
I'm
No,
going on vacation.
no, it's over in August. The reality is summer's over when they break football camp, in July in my mind. Like you're starting football, it's done. But yeah, I'm taking self-ownership. of my
no,
life.
I can't allow you to be the schmuck. I mean,
Yeah.
that just doesn't work.
You're breaking the
we're
rules,
self-punishing.
buddy.
We're not self-flagellating. So,
Don't
so
be such a
I've-
Woody Allen. It's just,
I've got one for you, Joel.
I
Your
got a
schmuck
spot
of the
in my
week by
shirt. I thought I
proxy.
had lung cancer, Woody Allen. I love that joke. Okay.
Your schmuck of the week by proxy is North Carolina Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. In his upcoming book, We Are the Majority, The Life and Passions of a Patriot, he's called for eliminating science and history from the 1st through 5th grade curriculum and shuttering the State Board of Education. He says, quote, "We should demand proficiency in reading, writing, and math in grades 1 through 5. In those grades, we don't need to be teaching social studies. We don't need to be teaching science. We surely don't need to be talking about equity and social justice," end quote.
There's
So-
Wow.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
take him.
he really is. I mean, so I guess if you don't teach kids social studies, they'll have no idea where they are at any given moment.
Oh, true. That was
Wow.
my favorite class, number one, social studies. I love social studies.
I love social
That was-
studies too.
That was that was a vigorous debate we would had in like 4th and 5th grade. That was great. So
Uh-huh.
no, that's idiocy. What are you
And
gonna
that's
do?
why you're a lawyer. Because
There you go.
You know what?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
A damn
All
good
right.
lawyer.
Thank you.
As one of my favorite bands said in 1972, who's next?
Yeah.
My
the
schmuck are all
slave-
those Republicans who are crying
Hey,
about
Roger.
student
Slutty.
loan relief, and they got all their loans forgiven. It's a
Okay.
long list of them, all of them. All you bunch of Nancy, say the F word for me.
Bunch of fuckers.
Right. Those people.
Greg, why are you keeping your powder clean
What do you mean?
or dry?
Why can't you say the bad word?
Well, it sounds better when it comes from you. It's like cool.
It's like hearing a grandma call somebody a bitch, right?
I don't know. Was that a compliment or a pickup line, Greg?
That was when my mother was in a nursing home in her final days. That was, my sister said, that was the weirdest part, was when the dementia patients would yell at the nurses, and she'd say, "There's something so weird about hearing an old lady's voice go, 'You bitch.'" So no. Anyway.
Okay, so I'm number one in the Nancy Ford Club.
Okay.
I admit it.
You know, actually, Nancy, the quiver that makes it actually a 2-syllable word is really awesome.
Yeah. You bitch. There you go.
All right, Allan.
I am going to go with the Ford Motor Company. They just had in Gwinnett County, Georgia, a $1.7 billion verdict against Ford for a pickup truck that in 2002, a couple were in, tipped over, the roof smashed. That was 2002. In 2004, they figured out a way how to have a better roof, but they did not install that roof in those cars till 2017. When they lost the verdict, they finally came out and expressed some sympathy for the very first time about this couple, and then they said, and then they tried to downplay the evidence in the case, and the lawyer, this guy named Butler, said, quote, "Second, the press should make Ford answer the question, what evidence did Ford present at trial contrary to the compensatory and punitive damages verdicts? The answer is nothing." And then he goes on to say, "Ford is unique and singular in the extent to which they exhibit disdain for the law, for courts, and for jurors." And I think the auto companies have been involved in so much criminality and gotten away. There should be some of these people in prison, and they never go to prison, almost never. I think Volkswagen had some people go, but they get away with so much shit, and Ford is so arrogant about this whole thing. It's just shameful. So
yeah, I remember the keys in the ignition, that would fall out if you had too many keys on there. Remember the Firestone tire stuff? I mean, the crushed
the Lions.
That's a Shonda.
Okay, Steve.
He's muted. Unmute him.
Oh, okay.
Stop.
I am sorry.
Stop.
Okay, here we go. My apologies.
Mine is much more local, and my nominee for Schmuck of the Week is Dr. William O'Neill from Henry Ford Hospital. The Free Press had a very long article about him, some things that came out. This is a guy, one of the most renowned cardiologists in the world, basically. When you read the article, it's astounding the great things that this man has done. But somewhere along the line, and I understand from a friend of mine that this man is in his late 70s. So maybe when he turned 70, he went crazy. But he was involved with, how do we pronounce that?
Hydroxychloroquine. Yeah.
Whatever the hell it was, he was up to his neck, up to his stethoscope in trying to convince the hospital itself and they should be able to prescribe this. And even after the FDA said that it cannot be prescribed for this, he was communicating with the people from the Trump administration. They were emailing back and forth. They were careful. They told him, don't put your name, don't send it direct email because it'll screw up what you're trying to do. But to me, a guy who's had a career, he's kind of the Rudy Giuliani of Detroit. He's had a career that's been admired by everybody. And all of a sudden, in his mid-70s, he decides to go off the deep end. And so for that, I find him perfect for the Schmuck of the Week.
It's
that is a good one.
Rudy Giuliani Schmuck of the Week than this particular.
Yeah. Quite the fall from grace. Nancy.
Yes.
I'm going to go with James Craig. One of the first lessons you learn when you get into politics should be, it's like baseball. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, sometimes it rains. If you're going to be a party loyalist, your job, if you're a loser, is to endorse the person who won. And he has said, he's told Our Detroit magazine, I'm not endorsing Tudor Dixon, and I may even endorse the U.S. Taxpayers Party candidate, Donna Brandenburg. P.S. Her running mate is Melissa Carone. So, for the 7 people in Detroit, in the state of Michigan, who give a shit who James Craig is endorsing, he may have to throw his his weight behind Donna Brandenburg because he's just a poor loser. He blames Tudor Dixon for raising one of the objections to his fraudulent signatures, and so she's too big for her britches. So
Poor loser.
Poor loser. Yeah, he's a sore loser. I mean,
like Donald Trump.
I had a gym teacher in
Ultimate.
elementary school who used to really ride us if we booed another team. I mean, he was really into like good sportsmanship, and it's like sometimes you're going to lose, and you got to learn to lose gracefully. So there.
By the way, that's I think a good shout out for the Little League World Series, which is going to come to an end this weekend. Some amazing baseball. It's been amazing. Yeah. I think actually, Nancy, I think Craig isn't endorsing her because he finds her a bit extreme on abortion.
Well, he stood up in front. Yeah, I know. He stood up in front of the crowd in Jackson last July and said he was pro-life. So, I don't think he's going to. That's not why he's not endorsing her.
He's pro-life for the other people.
Yeah.
So my schmuck of the week has to be Republican candidate for Senate in Pennsylvania, Mehmet Oz, Dr. Mehmet Oz. So with Steve going for a physician as well, or a former, apparently not bad cardiologist, trolling his opponent, John Fetterman, who suffered a stroke earlier this summer, as a way to deflect from the flack that Oz himself got for shopping for, you guessed it, crudité items. The Oz campaign shot back and said, quote, if John Fetterman had ever eaten a vegetable in his life, then maybe he wouldn't have had a major stroke and wouldn't be in the position of having to lie about it constantly, end quote.
Wow.
What a schmuck.
Yes. I can tell you from polling that despite the fact that Oz would be the first Muslim American in the Senate, no Muslim American wants to claim him. This was kind of like when Mike Tyson converted and people were like, oi.
That's not good.
That's a good one.
You and Oprah.
Did he convert? I didn't know when Mike Tyson had converted.
Mike Tyson converted in prison. Yeah.
Is he still Muslim?
He's still Muslim, apparently.
They get better food. If you claim you're Jewish and you're observant, you get kosher food.
Right.
So it tastes a little better. There's a lot of guys I knew out in the world that became Jews when they got in there. Then when they got out, they went back to being regular black Christians. But while they were in, they had the yarmulke and they were davening 3 times a day.
One of my first college boyfriend, Bruce Fishman, told me that when I flew, I needed to tell them I was Jewish and I wanted a kosher meal because it was better food. So there you go.
It used to not be. Kosher
Nobody
food
would
on
believe you
planes
were
in the
Jewish.
70s was very salty and very bland. So it was the salty version of British food. But it has gone better. I actually think now you should actually make the distinction of saying you want Sephardic kosher versus Mizrahi kosher, and really get into the reeds, as Moses would say.
Get into the reeds.
Wow.
Well, anyway, thank you again for a wonderful session. Greg Bowens, Steve Fishman, Joel Sklar, Nancy Derringer, and with the last word, as always, Allan.
Drive home safely.
Have a great week and have a